Hello and welcome to Journeys and Journals. We travel the roads of Southern Oregon, Northern California, now clear into Washington, and who knows, Nevada. We take history that's happened here and share it with you. My guest today has brought a picture that really brings back memories. So why don't you tell us, Jim, what is this picture about?
This picture was taken, I believe, in June of 1968, may have been May, and it is of Bobby Kennedy when he was campaigning and touring the country, and he stopped in Grants Pass at the Caveman Plaza, which is on 6th Street next to the railroad tracks by what's now the Dutch Bros coffee stand. And in about 2 or 3 days after this, in LA, he was assassinated.
In this picture, I mean, you sock it to him, Bobby. Takes on altogether different meaning, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So
yes, it does.
So soon he was dead. So soon he was gone. Our country suffered lots of losses, and you've brought a little bit of history about other losses. But how is it that you have pictures? That's probably the #1 story here.
Well, I work at the Grants Pass Bulletin, which was from 1923 through 1970 was a weekly newspaper in Grants Pass, served Josephine County. And my father bought into the Bulletin in 1948, and we moved here, and I was, 3 years old at the time. And we had a lot of pictures that were run in the paper, and a lot of history that went by.
Right, and some of the pictures might say photo by Robert C. Martin.
Yeah.
Because my dad would just bring his pictures. I don't think he got paid for them, but I think he thought it was his civic duty. He loved to take pictures. The picture turned out well, and I don't know, but what there might be some of those in here. You've brought good times and bad time pictures. I'm sure people will remember the floods.
Yeah, this was the 199 Highway 199 bridge at Applegate. We crossed the Applegate, and this was during the flood of 1955 when the bridge was washed away.
And how the folks got across, I do not know.
No.
You know, without those fancy pontoon things that they can pull up in no time nowadays, floods have really done a number on all of this area with lots of rain. Because here's the garage.
Some of these were taken off West Park Street, Plummer Lane or Plummer Avenue, and all the homes in that area were underwater during the flood of '55.
Yeah, you park your car in the garage. A funny story in that area, and I don't know the people's name, but they had said, well, the water's rising, we'd better get everything out of the house and into the garage. It was a shed, a storeroom. And they took everything that would move and put it in the garage. Well, the house got wet. Of course, the floodwaters came up, but it came up so high that it took the shed right down river with it.
Well, that was one thing that was so interesting about even the flood of '55, as I remember, all the washing machines and the outhouses and everything going down the river.
Yeah, I saw a whole house going down until it got to the Caveman Bridge, and then it kind of got stuck, and then it kind of crumbled and went on down. This is where?
Well, you can't really see it, but you can fairly see it here, the street sign for Lewis Avenue, which is just off West Park. And there was the house in the background is kind of got probably a foot or two of water in it.
Yeah, Dr. Plattner, I maybe misspoke. He had a lovely home on the river, and we went in with our shovels and helped out afterwards. Floods have done, well, they're really what makes this ground around here so fertile is the river loam that it brought up and made the hop fields and the gladiola fields so valuable. You had a picture of some of that wonderful, the fields of, well, this one's about the Gladiola Festival and the hop fields.
Yeah.
The hop fields, they grew so tall and they were so rich that in a bad season, the poles, these little wires and these poles, maybe one pole would break, and like dominoes, the poles would break down the field. Then you'd get an extra penny to pick hops, but that was hard work.
Yes, it was.
This is a picture I've never seen, and I'd like to add it to the Historic Society. Folks, if you have pictures that your family, and you can now make copies for $1 down at the Copy Center and offer them to your Historic Society. Now, this was news to me. The Gladiola Festival used to be the equivalent to the Rose Festival or the...
Right. It's a predecessor of the Boatnik celebration.
And then gladiolas were no longer just a throwaway item. As airplanes could transport the blossoms, there was a sale for it. So they said, well, let's do something downsizing. So they had this boat parade. The gladiola, they had gladiola court. The court had a queen, a matron, had proper functions. It was very, very grand as the Rose Parade in Pasadena. And we were mighty proud of it. And now what do we have?
What, the parade?
A Boatnik.
Yeah, the Boatnik parade, yes.
Boatnik is more this kind. You watch the races with your...
The Gladiola Festival was usually in August, and it was during the early 50s, and I think it went up just about the time, because the gladiolas kind of went away. The fields just kind of, the market went away, and so they quit growing them as much as they did. And they raised them for the bulbs. They sold the bulbs.
Right, so they just cut the blossoms, and somebody had the bright idea, well, let's just make that into a parade, and it was beautiful. You've brought so many treasures. I want to brag about, we had a dam here. It's called Savage Rapids Dam. It was what kept the irrigation water for all this wonderful land, fertile land that we have over here. And the fish had to be pretty strong fish to jump that distance, and so they put in a fish ladder, and some people thought the fish had to even be pretty sturdy to go up the fish ladder. And so what did they do?
They removed the dam. So
If we had a heavy flood, what do you think could happen?
well, that's hopefully what Lost Creek does, is help control some of the floodwaters.
Oh.
Savage Rapids was more of an irrigation dam, and that was the argument of removing it, or one of them.
Because we're talking a wild and scenic Rogue River. And
That's a photograph of Glenn Woolridge in one of his boats.
now, Glenn kind of made the river famous.
Famous, yes. Well, there's some other people that did, but he was the most famous of the Rogue River guides.
And he took pride. He, as was said of someone else, he didn't mind tooting his own horn.
No, Glenn was quite a character.
You want to tell me stories about Glenn?
Well, I was kind of young at the time, but still, I got to know him when in his last years, and he used to tell, one story he told of is how they cleared Blossom Bar. Blossom Bar used to be totally impassable, drifting, and you had to rope your boats through it because there's rocks. And this story that the way I got it was that the Forest Service provided him the dynamite, and they went down there and would throw the dynamite, light it, throw it in, and let it drift under the rocks and the boulders, and it'd blow out the boulders and cleared the two paths that they have now. Because like we were fortunate enough to print his book called The Rogue, A River to Run, and we printed it 11 times, and now I believe it's his grandson or his son has the rights to it, the book now. But anyway, there's pictures of the Blossom Bar before and after Glenn Woolridge's time.
And this is an autographed copy.
Yes, I was fortunate enough to get a personal autograph from Florence Arman, is the lady that's written the book, and then Glenn signed it also.
Glenn's got in trouble for that dynamite. This is the story I've been told. So they took him to jail.
Mm-hmm.
And the next morning they said, now Glenn, where did you get the dynamite to do that?
Mm-hmm.
You know the next line?
No, go ahead.
Well,
I was told that the Forest Service actually provided the dynamite.
that's what he was out in no time. Pictures in here are just wonderful. Did you take some of these pictures yourself or your dad?
No, these were from his collection, and then there's Florence Arman did a lot of research on this and did a lot of interview time, and the only thing that kind of took a little away from the book was that she tamed down some of his language.
Well,
Because there's a lot of direct quotes in the book from Glenn, but he was a very rough talker.
colorful.
Colorful.
His colorful language. His stepson, Bob Black, is my friend, and I have understood the colorful language, yes. Now, this doesn't look exactly like the Hell's Gate excursion boats, but it is the predecessor of it, isn't it?
Yeah, is that, does that say which one it is?
Well, Glenn built boats, and
Right.
and there is down at downriver where you can go and see one of his boats. He had vision and guts, I think you would say.
Yes, he ran the Rogue River from the mouth to Grants Pass, which is, he's the only one that's ever done that.
Upstream.
And they have a whole, Mercury Keycopper, the outboard motor company, filmed it and did it as kind of a promotion. And it's a really, if anybody has a chance, I don't know where the film is now, but it was a wonderful film showing him running. I don't exactly remember how long it took him, but.
Well, how long does it take to go downriver from here?
Well, usually you don't go from here, you go from below Galeese or Grave Creek, and it takes 3 or 4 days.
But those 3 or 4 days can be broken up with a lodge, stay
Correct.
overnight, or a tenting, or a rough it kind of, you have to have a guide, right? If you go on that wild and scenic portion of
You have to have a permit.
permit.
Yeah.
And
Don't necessarily have to have a guide, but you should have somebody that knows the river.
because we hear about, in fact, last night's news, there was a boat that was caught in an eddy,
In an eddy? Or
where
in
it
a
was just,
whirlpool?
yeah,
There is a place in Mule Creek Canyon, which is in the scenic and wild. It's called the Coffee Pot. And the water actually swirls and boils in there. And the time I went through, you kind of watch it for the boiling to go down, because the river rises 2 feet or so just in that area, because it's called a coffee pot. And when I pushed through, I got about right in the middle, and all of a sudden it started raising, and I was not going anywhere. And the one bank, and in that coffee pot, that canyon, it's so narrow, there's probably 6-8 feet. If you put the oars out on your raft or boat, is 6-8 feet, is you've got a wall that's probably, depending on the level of the river, anywhere from 30 to 20 feet high, sheer wall, rock wall up, and that's why it's called the canyon, Mule Creek.
When I went down the river, I got to stop right in that canyon.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you know, it's almost like a sanctuary. It was so still. It was so beautiful. Those river trips are a fun thing to do. Our nephew, Brent Martin, and his bride did that as their honeymoon.
Mm-hmm.
And lots of people from Hollywood greats, political greats, I mean, people, actors and actresses from way back.
Mm-hmm.
You've maybe known some of them or taken pictures of them.
Right.
Who,
the one thing that, well, there's Zane Gray's cabins down there in that area, and you get out of your boat or raft and you hike up to it. It's kind of just an old wood cabin sitting there now, but you can imagine what it was like when he was here, and in the years that he was here, what it isn't near as easy to get there, as because all you had is wood boats.
And you didn't have the restaurants and the things, I mean,
Right.
the lodge to lodge then.
Right. Well, basically had the We Ask You In, where most of them stayed.
Which is in Jackson County.
It's right at the, somewhere, I may be in Jackson
Right.
County, right at Savage Rapids Dam, or where it was.
And quite a historic spot.
Mm-hmm.
I've been there. I've asked them to do a show about it. When I was a kid, it had a little restaurant next to it. We just thought, oh my, we just thought that was the place to go when we had visitors. And the lodge is beautiful. It's now part of a 3-lodge community on the Rogue River,
Mm-hmm.
2 in town and 1 there. This boat picture, did they bring it all to you and say print it? I mean,
Well, we typeset it all.
when you
and
said typeset, you're talking this stuff,
Careful.
huh? Careful.
Yeah, well, we didn't do, it wasn't, this is letterpress type. That's what we call the masthead for the Grants Pass Bulletin newspaper, which is, this is lead and a copper plate on top of it.
And if you read backwards, you can see Grants Pass Bulletin.
Mm-hmm. That was, when we printed the newspaper, it was done letterpress. It was done all on linotype metal and hand-pegged or foundry type that was put together letter by letter.
What are those little shims or little dams?
The M's and N's, the spacing.
Yeah, little dams or something you have to...
Well, you have thins, coppers, and you have M's and N's. M is a square of the type size. So if this type is this high, an M is exactly the same width, spacing. And then an N is the same height, but it's only half the width.
Because I'd wondered how they make all those letters, all those columns come out even, until I saw that you can slip in one of those or...
Mm-hmm. You justify the type.
And now we do it all on computer.
Yes, it's
There.
changed the world of printing.
How has it changed your business?
A lot more people are doing it on their own computers. They have printers that aren't very expensive, that print as good as whatever we need. And people, we don't do the typesetting of as much. People do their own on the computer, and they produce a electronic form or a PDF of the copy they want, and then we put it in our computer and we generate a plate, computerized plate maker, and then we put it on the press, or we print them digitally on a digital copier machine.
Now, what do you think your dad would say about the work you and your daughter? Is your son in the business too?
No, he isn't. But anyway, the one thing I always remember him saying when we converted over from hot metal or linotype and hand peg to offset, photo offset, he said, well, if the price of silver goes way up, and then we won't be able to buy the photographic paper because all photographic paper is silver based. And he kind of wanted to keep some of the old equipment around. That was his excuse. I think he didn't want to let go of it.
I understand. We have a warehouse. We have same reason. Tell me your dad's name.
Walstrom?
And you have a picture of Walt here.
Yes, I do.
Lots of people will remember Walt from...
Yeah, this is the picture of him and coming back after a day of fishing, where they got steelhead, and these are probably 20, 30-inch steelhead. And the short guy is Walt, my dad, and the tall guy is Clarence Davidson, who used to run the skating rink or the roller dome.
Oh, that roller dome. It has a history all its own, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Do you remember it was at a Camp Adair over in Klamath Falls?
Correct.
And World War II was over, and they surplus that.
Well, you know, I can tell a little story about that, how Clarence got that building.
Okay.
It's my dad's brother, or my uncle, was the, I'm trying to think what you call his name, but he was in charge of distribution of the buildings at Camp White, or Adair. And he kind of helped Clarence get the bid in on the building to, which I don't know if that's called inside information. But anyway, that was one of the reasons he was able to acquire it.
We were surely, in Grants Pass didn't have a lot of social things, but boy, then that roller rink came with its music and its lights, and oh, it was wonderful. Now you got a picture here of the guys showing off.
Yeah, this is kind of a little bit, the old, it's not much of a picture anymore, but it shows what a little trick photography could do in the old days with prints, is it shows the front of the skating rink and Clarence Davidson sitting up on the roof and holding a bar with 3 fish on it.
Wow, those are real fish.
Yeah, that was after one of the trips. Clarence and my dad, Clarence used to work on weekends. The skating rink was open.
Right.
And one day during the week. And then my dad basically having a weekly newspaper on during Thursdays and Fridays after the paper's out. It came out every Thursday. And the weekend through Wednesday is putting the paper together each week. And then he had free days. So Clarence and he were best fishing buddies because Clarence was also a guide. When he didn't have a trip, they would go fishing.
Oh boy. Well, we're time's up, but let's do some more about this.
Okay.
I really thank you for coming and bringing all these gorgeous pictures. I'm Bernie Martin Beck, and stay tuned for more information. Thank you so much
You
for
bet.
coming to be my guest.
Okay.